Welcome everybody to another edition. I think it's the Tuesday after 4th of July edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. And Abisha, my prayers go out to you. So I'm thinking about you. We took off Friday, but we're back today, and we've got Mayor Beth Wojtowski from Dayton. We've got Commissioner Rick Olson, Yamhill County. We have Gioia Goodrum from the McMinnville Chamber of Commerce. We have Mayor Michael Keep of Amity and the Salem Kaiser School District. Whoop, whoop. And we have Abisha Stone from SEDCOR. Oh yeah. All right. Whoa, yes. I just lost Mayor Wojtowski. So what I'd love to do is get started with Commissioner Olson. Commissioner Olson, what would you like to tell people today?
You know, Casey, it's interesting this last week that I've been spending a lot of time in downtown McMinnville, some in downtown Newburgh, and I think McMinnville's doing actually very well considering they had, and Gioia might report on this, but we had the downtown opening from Friday afternoon through Sunday. I was really impressed to see the number of people outside dining and drinking wine and yet maintaining the social distancing. I think everybody is well for. Even walking the streets now, I'm really glad to see the number of people that are wearing masks, even when they're not in a business or they're outside of business. I think that the governor's mandate has done some good, and I think some of it's starting to soak into people. I think I'm a little concerned as far as the governor extending her deadline till October. I think that there's some merchants that may look at that as a negative thing, but I think if we're already open under Yamhill County under phase 2, as long as our merchants continue to do a good job and everything, I think we'll be just fine where we sit right now. So I'm really proud of most of the citizens of Yamhill County that have been applying and actually been using some self-discipline and wearing their mask when they go outside and inside. So, but that's all I have right now, Casey.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Olson. I did note that Yamhill County today had its highest daily total at double the most recent highest daily total. It's still 16 it's 16 new cases today, which is considerably lower than some counties, but we're definitely seeing it's a reminder that our county isn't a bubble. When we all stay within the county, it feels like we can be, but it looks like at least in a couple of instances, people left the county for soda gatherings, for recreation, acquired the virus and came back into the county and shared it with friends and family. So that's a good reminder, I think, to all of us that we aren't a bubble here, and we'll close the eye on. And I want to say welcome to Miriam Vargas Corona from UNIDOS Bridging Communities, and welcome Wendy Veliz from PGE, General Electric. I would love to go now to Mayor Wojtowski for sharing with the community what's going on.
I'm kind of having some connectivity issues. Do you want to come back to me, Casey? I don't even know if you can hear me. Uh-oh. Yeah.
Beth, I may be able to hear you just fine and see you just fine.
Yeah, we lost Casey.
Well, we're going to lose somebody. What a guy to lose, right?
Yeah, Casey just texted me and said he got booted off. So I need to readmit Casey. Mayor Cape, do you want to go next? Well, oh.
Yes. I'm bad. My internet is also bad, apparently. But on this. Just want everybody to know that. Mayor Cape, what would you like to tell people besides the big news?
I think it's my turn. I'm having I think most everybody's having some issues today. So, yeah, I guess the big news for me to share is that I've decided to not run for re-election. Apparently that news is in the newspaper now. I did announce that at our July 1st council meeting. So in January, we will be having a new mayor for the city of Amity. It's been a little over 15 years that I've been on the city council now. So it'll be a big change for me personally, and a small change for the city. But I always said that when my daughter got into high school, it would probably be time for me to stop. And sure enough, she's finished up her freshman year of high school and going to be a sophomore next year. And just time to spend some more time with family, since that goes quickly. The last couple of years that the kids get to be with you. So as far as the city of Amity goes, not a huge changes with anything right now. Our park is still closed as the contractors are wrapping up the work on our covered area in the park. But hopefully we'll be getting that opened up soon. We're just kind of plugging away, we're still concerned about the water situation. We're at that point where we're probably gonna, we keep getting closer and closer and our staff has already had some conversations with our customers that have had their water service continue, but have had trouble paying their bills. So at some point we're going to have to move forward from that. And I just hope that we can get some assistance from somewhere, whether that be state or federal assistance to help those people that need that during this time. As far as the guidelines and whatnot, and the cases that are coming up, the numbers keep going up. We can see that, and I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing. I don't think the governor will go back to having the entire state with all of the restrictions again, but I think we're going to see regions and counties continue with stricter and stricter and more restrictions put in place as we go along until we can get this back under control. That's kind of been her message, and I just don't see the numbers trending in a direction to avoid that at this time. So, I just want to try and keep our city prepared for that and to keep this process going. And I don't know how long it's going to go. It's for the foreseeable future. So I know Casey had also mentioned in the email that bring up about schools, and I'm in the office again today working. So in fact, when I'm done with this meeting, I'm going to join another meeting. That's what we're talking about, is our reopening plan and continuing to put that together. Our transportation department, we have to submit, I think it's our first draft to our supervisors tomorrow, and there will be several other reiterations of that first draft, but I think we're hoping to get that out to the public at some time by the end of next week. So we'll have more and more information of that out soon. But I know, I've been talking with some of our bus drivers, and I'm sure it's the same questions that teachers have as well as parents. And I know my wife, who's a teacher, has the same questions. It's, how are we going to keep staff safe? How are we going to keep students safe? How are we going to be able to get everybody the education that they need and deserve? And once you answer one of those questions, or you think you have the answer to one question, somebody pops up 2 or 3 other questions that you then have to also answer too, so it's like for us, we don't leave any kids at the bus stop in the morning. It'd be unsafe to just leave a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid out on the road. So, we always take them to school. Well, what if that kid we're on the hybrid system and that kid is not scheduled to be at school that day, but shows up at the bus stop? What do you do? And then if you put them on the bus, now your bus is overcrowded. And then what do you do? Down the road? And what do you do if a kid gets sick while riding the bus or starts exhibiting symptoms? How do you quarantine that student on the bus, and how do you handle that situation? And not that any of those are bad, but those are questions that need to come up, and then you need to come up with a plan and a way to answer and address those. So that's really where we're at with that process, and I'm just kind of trying to move forward. So, and I'm pretty sure most schools are in that same situation. We're all facing that August 13th, I think it is, deadline to have those plans submitted to Oregon Department of Education, and that they have to be approved by a health department by that time. So, we're all trying to work together and come up with some answers, and so that's really kind of where we're at at Salem Kaiser.
Great, thank you very much, Mayor. Oh, do you have, I was about to say, does anybody have questions? I think Mayor Wojtowski.
No, I don't have questions. I wasn't sure if you were back on the call. I was just going to thank Michael for his comments.
Thank you, and thank you to both of you. Mayor Wojtowski took over for me a minute before switching internet connections, so thank you.
And it does seem to be now, Casey, if you're ready for me to give my comments. I think Rick said he can hear me, and he'll just repeat it all if nobody else can. Right, Rick?
Sounds great. I can hear you too, but we're actually pretty close,
Yeah. Well, one thing I would want to clarify for my community, watching the numbers, of course, climb is concerning, but in watching the zip code breakdown, particularly the 97114 zip code, which is for Dayton, has the highest rate of infection in Yamhill County, which I want my residents to be aware of, so that we can continue to be cautious and follow CDC OHA guidelines for social distancing, mask wearing, and especially for sanitation, so that we're all washing adequately to try to prevent the spread. And I do think that that's limited into who is aware of that growing rate in the city of Dayton, or in the Dayton zip code. For my school position, we finished our initial draft of our reopening plan. We have a survey now out. We're trying to collect feedback from our community. We're looking for a few things in particular, trying to get numbers of how many of our families are for sure returning. I know lots of families are, unfortunately considering some alternative options for, homeschooling or online education, switching to charter schools, private schools, or other opportunities. And so one thing is, and I'm sure Salem Kaiser is going to experience the same thing. It's really, really hard to know what our numbers are really even going to look like in terms of figuring out these cohorts and planning. So we're trying to get that in terms of our feedback. We're also trying really hard to find a way to provide as much in-person time, as possible, particularly at the elementary level, because we know that that's really critical for working parents, especially, and also just for continuing in normalcy and mental health of those young kids. So we're trying to get elementary kids here as much as possible. We're looking at just a couple days a week, most likely for high school, separated into cohorts. And again, we're waiting to see that survey data to see what our community really needs in terms of finalizing and submitting those plans to the state for approval for reopening. So there's a little bit of what's going on there. The OMA, I do want to just volunteer for others, had a conference call last week just to remind mayors, but can also be a reminder to other people in leadership that we need to all be really conscious and aware of our public statements in meetings, our statements on social media, and how things can be misconstrued, taken out of context, or even just literally interpreted, and can really be alienating or upsetting for sections of our community. So especially while we're dealing with a lot of economic turmoil and looking at, improving systemic racial issues and looking at reopening schools like we've never seen, all of course in the middle of a pandemic, people are on edge, and, we all need to try to be kind, and use empathy, both for, not even just both, but in dealing with all of those situations, and try to remember that we don't know what's going on with every individual or family that we come into contact with. We did have that call. I think Mayor Cape was on it last week, and I think it was really productive just to remind folks about how important our public messaging is when you're in a position of leadership.
Sorry, I forgot I was mute. Yes, thank you for that, Mayor. Do people have questions for Mayor Witowski or Mayor Cape? And I think that the school issue is one that we all have some stake in here. So questions for them. They are really the experts in the room for this, but I'd love to hear from people. Okay, my question then for them is, Mayor Cape and Mayor Witowski, how do you see the balance happening between students, parents being, needing to be at work and also needing to be home with them versus kids being in school? And would you rather see the school have people full-time, and what would that look like? Or would you rather have them be at home part of the time, and what would that look like?
Mayor Cape, do you mind if I go first? Okay. Ideally, what I would like to see is essentially full-time regular attendance, but in cohorts at the elementary level, because those kids are too young to be without childcare. And we're not just tasked with the issue of, well, how am I going to support their education while I'm working? Or, am I going to have to stay home now because my kids are home 2 days, 3 days a week? There's also the fact that we were already in what was identified as a childcare desert. It can't happen. It's not a possibility to say that all the families simply need to find new childcare 3 days a week, especially childcare that can support educational activities in distance learning from their facilities. That is not a possibility with even close to the numbers that we've seen in Oregon, even in the last decade. So in order for our economy to see recovery and for businesses to not close doors and to have their workforce mobilized again, we simply have to have schools available to take kids. Now, whether or not that looks traditional, I doubt it. I think we're probably going to see, our cohorts will look smaller than our typical class sizes have been. And, those in the education world know that that's actually better for student outcomes and learning and growth data anyway. It also helps with the cohorting. If you have one child who does exhibit symptoms and requires isolation upon a positive COVID test, you don't have to isolate the whole school. Everybody doesn't have to stay home. It would just be their cohort. So I think the cohort plans that are being developed are as good as we can make them, to allow children to come to school, to allow parents to return to work, to still provide adequate access to education without crippling our economy or causing a mental health crisis among students or the parents, who then become kind of in desperate, economically desperate. I think for older kids, it's going to look different. I know for Dayton, we looked at those numbers. We were looking at our elementary numbers and trying to figure out how to make it so that all of our kids can come to school all the time. And, we would have to use every single staff member all the time. We would have to use every single available space, gyms, libraries, specialist offices, all of that kind of thing could be utilized. But it's likely we'll be able to figure out how to do that. For the high school, we can't. Our building is too old and too small, and our students are simply too numerous to make that work. If every single teacher at the junior high and high school had a cohort that was maximizing the number that we are allowed to have in a classroom, allowing for the 35 square feet of space that we are required per student. We cannot fit our student population into our building. So we are looking at a little bit of a different system. So kids might go to school Tuesday and Thursday, and then Wednesday and Friday, and watch their teachers' instruction through technology or packets or supplemental videos, supplemental reading, and all that kind of thing, the comprehensive distance learning on the other days, so that they're still in education full-time, but parents aren't necessarily expected to direct that curriculum. That'll all be designed and implemented by teachers. Parents won't be expected to develop lessons, grade lessons, record things like that. That'll all be still left to teachers, even in the distance learning. Like Mayor Cape said, Dayton is also going to hybrid. So we do also expect some of our families with medically fragile children to do comprehensive distance learning. And we do, quite honestly, expect some families to look at other avenues for educating their children. I know right now there seems to be an impression that private schools are not going to have the same rules, that charter schools won't have the same rules. We have parents that are really wanting their kids to play sports, so they're looking at which schools are going to be allowing sports more openly. But I think that we all know, looking through the previous rules, that however things come out and if orders change, that they're probably going to change universally, and that all of those schools will be required to uphold the same standards. So I hope we don't lose a lot of families. Obviously we want what's best for all of those kids in our communities, though. And for some kids, returning to school in a very stressful environment, if they have a health condition, for example, is not going to be what is best for that kid. Yeah, okay. Gioia.
Thank you very much. Gioia, you're muted right now.
Thank you. Thanks. I thought I unmuted myself. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I have a question. Are there best practices from other communities and other school districts? Where's this all coming from, and what are other places doing? What about other countries? I know that, Asia's had SARS epidemics in the past, and what did they do? I'm just curious to see if there's any best practices out there, I guess, for lack of a better word. Thank you.
I'm not sure if Mayor Cape wants to address that a little bit more. I will say, we tried really hard to find a lot of other plans. We didn't look a lot international just because our systems and facilities look very different. And so we didn't look a lot at that. We did look at some other state plans, but of course, the state mandates are all over the board too. So there's states that are just returning to normal school. That's not going to be an option for us because of the state mandates that we do have from our governor. And there's states that seem to be really advocating for mostly distance learning and are not offering as much for childcare, again, as a result probably of what their local states are requiring. So Mayor Cape unmuted too, and I'll let him tackle that one as well.
Yeah, and I just back that up. I did a lot of research looking around, see what other school districts thinking. There's got to be somebody already that's got some plans out in place, and the reality is everybody's pretty much in the same spot at the same time. Everybody's trying to develop their plans right now, and they're all saying that they're going to try and get something public by the middle to end of July, pretty much across the board, all across the country. So there's not a lot to go off of what somebody else has. And like the mayor said, every state does have slightly different variances of what their guidelines look like. And so it's just, and quite honestly, when I did look, I was actually very impressed with what Oregon did have out for guidelines. It was some of the better plans that I saw as far as more details and in the examples and a lot more information to go off of than what other states were providing. So in that aspect, Oregon really was one of the better examples. And I think there's a lot of states that are probably looking at Oregon's examples to build off of. So, so there's that. Hope
Thank
that
you. I
answers your question.
appreciate it. Did. Thank you. I appreciate everything that you're doing for our children and really the thoughtfulness that you have for their parents and our employers as well, because everybody's struggling with this. So thank you. Appreciate it.
It really makes you realize how much of our systems are built around public schools, providing education and a safe place for students and children to be, and how we need them. Just like straight up, we need our public schools. Mayor Keefe, did you have?
Yeah, I just was going to kind of piggyback off of what Mayor Witoski said in response to your question. And, you know, we're looking at a little bit of a different model as well, primarily the hybrid model, where grades 3 through 12 will be in a cohort, and they'd be going to school on either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday. And then Fridays would be primarily for electives like band, art, choir, and also for tutoring if students need some assistance to make up. So, for example, a student that goes to school on Monday and Wednesday, they would be home doing distance learning on Tuesday and Thursday. And then those groups would switch. And then grades K through 3 or K through 2 will be going, at least right now, the plan is to kind of have those grades go Monday through Thursday for half a day. And so there's a lot of details there to work out the logistics on that, but that's kind of what we're shooting for. And then we're also looking at one of the options is just straight distance learning, that a student can or a parent can choose to, no, I don't want my kid to go to school at all. I don't feel it's safe. I want them to stay home and distance learn. And I think we're looking at anywhere from about 20 to 30% of our students taking that option. And so that's a big number. And so then, you know, for me, being a former teacher and my wife being a teacher too, I also think, you know, well, how's that going to work if Monday through Thursday, you've got to be teaching 2 separate cohorts, the same thing, and do distance learning at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how those plans come about and how they make that happen and make it equitable to everybody and make sure that everybody gets a good education. But I know that's kind of what we're looking at, you know, probably about 20% or so, maybe more than that, not coming to school. And then the others would be at school, you know, think about your 3rd graders, you know, half of them would be at school on Monday and then the other half on Tuesday, and then they flip back and forth. So anyhow, I hope that gives you a little more background.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And since we have Al from Congresswoman Bonamici's office here on the call, for the 2 school teacher, school employees here, is there anything that the federal government can do to help with getting school up and running in a safe way? And that would be a question for Al and for the mayors.
Sure, it's a great question, and I appreciate you putting me on the spot. I don't handle education in our office, so I'll my go-to answer for that is to say I'm pretty sure that's going to be mainly put on by the state. But I'll ask my colleague and see if there's anything going on that I'm not aware of. I do want to speak to Mayor Witoski's comments about childcare, though. The Congresswoman has identified childcare as one of her main priorities. And Mayor Witoski, you said it exactly right, that folks are not going to be able to go back to work if childcare industry is not there to support them. The Congresswoman has advocated for a $100 billion investment in childcare. That's $50 billion now to help the businesses stay open, and $50 billion after, because as Mayor Witoski also said, we know that childcare was already in crisis before the pandemic, and this pandemic has just exacerbated the already issues. She did release a report a few weeks ago, which I think I've shared, but I'm going to reshare it in the chat for folks to look at. it's a doozy. It's probably, I think it's about 20 pages, but it's really worth reading. It outlines the problem and also gives some real action items that are what she thinks we need for federal supports. And in terms of school, I know what I've been hearing most is that the best thing is for folks to follow public health guidelines, and the more we wear masks and stay safe right now, the more likely we'll be able to have schools open in the fall. I'm also going to use this opportunity, since I've got my mic unmuted and I probably won't be unmuted again for a little while, to remind folks that the Congresswoman does have a town hall next week. She'll have 3 of them. I'll share the information for that in the link. Oh, I'm sending these things to Commissioner Kulla privately in the chat. I'll fix that when I'm done talking, because apparently I can't multitask very well today. So she has 3 town halls next week that I'll share the information for, and folks are welcome to come, and you can talk to her directly and ask her some questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions while I'm here. I missed you all last week. I was going to join Friday. I couldn't join Tuesday, and then it was a holiday, and I was like, oh, my Yamhill buds.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Al? Concerns and comments? Oh, somebody is unmuting. Maybe not. Okay.
No? Okay.
All right. Great. Thank you very much, and welcome back. Miriam, I would love to find out, are there specific current concerns that you have heard from the Latinx community around schools and or childcare?
Not directly, but I think we're continuing to be resource navigators for the community. Most of the issues that people are asking about are about economic supports and also legal representation, needing to find an attorney for various needs. But I think that a lot of, well, I'm wondering, I don't know if the news about the guidelines that schools have to follow, if that news is slowly getting to the community, and maybe that's why we haven't heard concerns yet. So I don't have any specifics that I'm able to share.
Okay, great. Thank you at least for bringing that up. And hopefully as plans are developed by the communities, the school districts, that they will get out to people. And it sounds like at least Mayor Wojtowski mentioned that they're sending a survey out. So community members will hear it. Oh yeah.
Our survey is also available in both Spanish and English, and we have tried to use kind of some known networkers who are able to make sure that survey gets to all of our families, including non-English speakers. So we're hoping that we get a good take rate and get a comprehensive view.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And before we move, as we're moving on around the roundtable, I just want to welcome Commissioner Starrett. I think that's our 7501, and ask her what she would like to speak with the community about today.
That's me, 7501. Thanks,
welcome.
No, I've been here, I've been listening. I've just been quiet as a mouse. So yeah, just a couple of things. I received an email this morning from a business owner, and I will not identify the business owner. And I think that this was particularly disturbing. This business owner said, we have been very blessed in that we've been deemed essential from day one, so we've been able to serve our communities. Or so we thought. Many people have followed the guidelines from day one, cleaning, spraying, cleaning, and going above OSHA guidelines, but the public still judged us. Our people have been threatened, have been called names, told that they are killing people as they stood behind their shield. We have been bitten, kicked, beaten. We have had to serve more trespassing orders in 4 months than we did in 50+ years. Now we're expected to police the mask wearing or be fined under OSHA rules, to refuse service to a longtime customer just because they don't wear a mask. We didn't have masks for the first 3 months, and not one of our people got sick. And he says, if you look into the eyes of my staff 6 months ago, they beamed, they glow. Today they are empty and, for lack of a better term, battle fatigued. We cannot as a community survive another shutdown. But our governor, as she makes it a point to say, I know how hard this is, does not have any idea how hard this is for us. The bottom line is, can we do something to drop the possible fines? I guess this is in reference to the masks. According from the state, the public can do whatever it wants and not be fined. Why should OSHA have the right to fine a business? I contacted our legislators, and I did hear back from Representative Post, who said, unfortunately, this is probably only going to get worse, that they are actually seeing one of his constituents received a red flag warning for having two people in the store on different days weren't wearing masks, and the next step is a $5,000 fine. So what we're seeing here is, as we breathe down the neck of another shutdown and we see the dubious efficacy of masks and the fact that we didn't wear masks for many months and people in stores weren't having outbreaks, I'm going to continue to advocate for the women, the veterans, the people who are not sick, and the people who are suggesting that this is really becoming quite onerous. And I do think we need to have that voice. So just sharing that information with the group.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I confess that I didn't realize until just this morning, talking with County Council, that that's the kind of the dynamic, is that when people aren't wearing masks, it ends up being on the business owner and not on the customer. And likewise for the county, when an employee or a visitor, a guest and a client isn't wearing a mask, that again, that comes, the OSHA concern comes to the employer, in this case, the county. So it is a real concern, obviously, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Commissioner. Do we have other thoughts on that? Yes, Gioia.
Thank you. Commissioner Starrett, thank you for sharing that information with us. It is especially concerning to businesses right now. A $5,000 fine because someone refused to wear a mask in your business, and then on top of that, asking them to leave because they're not wearing a mask is going to kill businesses. And we have got to figure out a way that we can support our businesses so that they can survive. Because if they don't survive, then our economy is going to tank, because who's going to go work if there's no businesses? We've got to figure out a better way of doing this. And I don't know what the answer is. And I'm sorry, I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did. But I do think that, $5,000 fine on a business that's already hanging on by his fingernails is not the right way to go. Come on, you've got people coming into your business and they don't want to wear a mask. You're not the police. It's not fair. It's not fair to businesses, and it's putting an awful lot of pressure on them that they've already trying to hold everything together. I think we need to find another way. Thank you.
And it looks like, thank you, Gioia. It looks like Abisha has unmuted herself, but I want to acknowledge that I really appreciate, Gioia, your acknowledgement that you don't know the solution, but that you are willing to acknowledge there's a problem. So, Abisha, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, and really it's just leaning in on this conversation. So I appreciate the concern that the business is having, who expressed their real life struggles with Commissioner Starrett, and I echo what Gioia says. So, I mentioned this a couple of weeks back. In addition to general liability, the policing of the general public wearing masks being put on the businesses is potentially dangerous for staff. It agitates people, it causes intensities to occur and emotions to spike. But there's also this additional layer of the fact that people that have often unseen medical conditions who cannot wear masks are not required to wear them. And I believe in that. I agree with that. There are obviously some medical conditions where folks can't wear masks, but it really leaves this gray area for our businesses. And it also opens them up to a different type of liability. So what we're asking for is
is clarity and support. As Gioia mentioned, these businesses have been struggling. They're barely hanging on by a thread. A $5,000 fine could absolutely shut them down. And then the fear and frustration of managing these sorts of concerns are still preventing some of our businesses from even trying to reopen. And what that comes down to ultimately in the future is jobs. This is really lost jobs. So as we're trying to recover our economy, how do we consider doing that? So I just want to continue to echo that and bring up those other pieces of this puzzle that make it even more complicated, so that as we're trying to work through solutions, we're remembering that it is very multifaceted. Each of those pieces needs to be addressed, and the responsibility of maintaining public safety comes down to an individual level and should not be placed entirely on our private sector businesses.
Great, thank you very much, Abisha, for adding to that. And Commissioner Olson, what would you like to add?
Yeah, Casey, one thing I'd like to add for the group is I had a conversation this morning with a merchant in downtown McMinnville. And one of the things that concerns them is that OLCC coming in to basically verify that they're not exceeding midnight, and they're not operating after midnight or out of hours. And very seldom did OLCC did that. And even though OLCC cannot cite them, could cite them for the after hours, part of OLCC's mandate is also to give anybody that's in violation to OSHA, so OSHA can look at it. To me, that's awful dangerous. You have one governmental agency that's checking for your hours of operation, and another just reporting to another one if you're not meeting compliance in the other areas. So they're not only scared now OLCC coming in, they're also scared of OLCC coming in and then reporting it to OSHA.
Great, thank you very much, Commissioner. I guess there's a lot of concerns here then, it sounds like. What I will make sure I do is when I'm on the economic response team call in about an hour, I'll be sure to echo those concerns and send them up through the chain, as it were. So thank you for sharing all those with me. What I'd like to do, unless there are further comments on that, I'd like to return to Miriam Vargas Corona. I didn't allow her to finish her updates to the community. So Miriam.
Hi, thank you. So I'm the executive director at UNIDOS Bridging Community. Just wanted to give some updates about work that we have been doing. So we are one of the 20 organizations that have been navigating applications for the Oregon Worker Relief Fund. This is a statewide economic disaster relief fund for folks who are not eligible for unemployment. And this week we will have awarded the first $10 million that were provided from the state, which is great news that we're providing financial assistance for folks that are falling through the cracks. But it's also showing how fast the amount of money went out, because there's such a great need. Our voicemails from people that need the assistance are continuing to come in. We have never been able to get our voicemails below 100. So there's still lots of folks that have the need, but are being left out because the funding has run out. And so if folks, people in the community or businesses or other entities want to contribute to the fund, that's still a possibility at workerrelief.org. So we are going to be taking more appointments for the navigations probably through tomorrow, and then we are going to stop until we learn that there's more funding available. We are also going to be navigating for a different funding, the Oregon Farm Worker Quarantine Fund. I believe it's another additional $10 million specifically for farm workers that need to self-quarantine, either because they have tested positive for COVID-19 or they have been exposed to somebody either through their work or because they live with somebody. And so that'll be a funding source specifically for this reason, and we will be navigating applications for that as well. We also now have 10,000 NK95 masks that we are going to be distributing to our ag workers. And so we are looking for ag producers who will allow us to distribute, or to give them, we won't be doing the distribution, but to give them resource kits that we're putting together. Again, because what we're hearing from the community is that the economic support and resources are most needed. So we'll include some masks in each resource kit, along with information about eligibility for SNAP, information about the importance to participate in the 2020 census, and then just generally how to get a hold of us if they need other kind of resource navigation support. So those are some updates that I have, work that we have going on right now.
Thank you, Miriam. Are there other questions for Miriam or comments? Miriam, would you be able to send just like here's how to get access to the resource kits email, just a reply to the roundtable? Okay, because that way we can send it out to people as well. And Wendy is unmuting herself.
I just want to say that PGE is really pleased to be a part of the Oregon Worker Relief Fund Coalition. I think we were one of the first businesses to join that coalition, and hoping to make an announcement soon on a contribution. So we'll really feel this is important to support this community.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. We want to be able to keep helping folks and not turn them away. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Other questions or comments for Miriam? Okay, thank you very much, Miriam. I want to make sure that Gioia, Goodrum, and Wendy and Abisha get a little bit of time for any of their updates to the community as well. So Gioia, what would you like to tell people today? And thank you for joining us once again.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate this. It's good to see everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. My biggest news continues to be Lemonade Day. August 15th, very excited. Get your kids enrolled. It's super easy to do. There's all kinds of great educational opportunities to do this program, and it might keep them busy making lemonade. That's August 15th. On Saturday, this Saturday, the 11th of July, from 10 to 12 p.m. in the Chamber parking lot, you can do a drive-by and pick up a Lemonade Day bag. It's got all the information that you need for a Lemonade Day and a bunch of goodies and stuff for kids to activities and things like that. So come on by and pick one up. And that's about all I have for today. There's some business grants that we're, sort of ancillary to with the city and the county. And I can let Abisha talk more about those things. But yeah, Lemonade Day is the big thing right now. So thank you.
Thank you. I was having trouble getting my mute again. I'll be so used to this, and then we'll meet in person, and I won't have to be used to it. All right, Wendy Valise, what would you like to tell people in the community today?
Hi, I'm going to make it very, very quick. One, I just want to do a shout out to Chair Kulla. This is to your Yamhill and Commissioner Starrett. This is a shout out to your Yamhill County team, specifically Mark Lago. We and Dennis Durham and Preston Polisek in Yamhill County, we have been working under a COVID-19 permit and have gotten tremendous feedback from customers that in the midst of a pandemic, the work has continued, and we've worked, really appreciate the collaboration and partnership. So that's really a shout out to your team. As always, excellent staff and excellent leaders in the community. The other piece that I wanted to mention is there are 2 funds open right now. We have the Drive Change Fund applications that open July 1st through September 1st. And this is PGE will award $2.25 million in grants to local organizations spearheading projects that increase access to electric transportation. And then the second one that's also open right now is our Renewable Development Fund. And those are grants, that grant application process is from June 1st to August 1st. And those are for community clean energy projects. An example of that was the city of Newburgh received a grant in the last round for solar installation at their wastewater treatment plant. Mayor Wojtowski, we hope to see Dayton in the Drive Change Fund. We know you applied and it was a very competitive process, but we hope to see Dayton apply again in this next round. Those are my announcements for today.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have questions for Wendy? All right, then I will move on. Thank you very much, Wendy. Abisha, what would you like to tell people besides the wonderful things you've already told them?
Thank you, Commissioner Kulla. I had to unmute too. First, I just wanted to real quick say thank you, Mayor Cape, for your service to the city of Amity. I know you just mentioned your retirement, and it's been a very long run. And so I know that that community is grateful for your commitment and participation. And, you know, it's not lost on me, but that both of the mayors we have on this call also work for the public education system. I think you just have a deep heart for service to our community, and I greatly respect that. So thank you for that work in both areas. So another reminder, tomorrow at noon, SEDCOR has our webinar is available. We call it our forum lunch. Of course, we're not serving lunch, it's online, but we will have 4 of our local manufacturers on a speaker panel. All 4 of them pivoted during coronavirus to make PPE. One of them is a food manufacturer. I will put the link on our website in the chat right now, and that is a free event. I hope that you will join us and listen to and ask questions of these 4 local manufacturers. We'll be talking about all about the impact that they've had, their businesses have had, and their industries have had related to COVID-19. I also wanted to let you know that tomorrow you will be seeing an announcement for the regional grant program that we have been actively securing funds for. That announcement will come out through Willamette Workforce Partnership. Again, we were able to secure about $457,000 through 3 grants to this regional effort. We are still applying for money for this regional effort. And the program that is being launched is in partnership with the Council of Governments and Willamette Workforce Partnership, again, who will be administering the grant. It is for very small businesses, 15 employees or less, who have not been able to access other funding support through federal or state means. A lot of those requirements are dictated by the state, but more detail will be in that announcement tomorrow. Also wanted to let folks know Business Oregon Round 3 funding is open. The timeline for submitting applications is through the end of the day on the 10th. So it's a very short turnaround time. And these are the funds that essentially help to fund programs like this 3-county grant program. So they're available to individual jurisdictions, to cities and counties, to economic development districts, to essentially be passed through grant funds for businesses for recovery purposes. But I wanted to let you know their round 3 funding has opened. It's open until the 10th. And from what we know now, this is the last of the 3 rounds of funding that they're issuing for this support. We are hearing a lot of concern, as many of you have voiced, about potential reclosing of the state. And I won't go into that anymore, but that is a lot of the questions that we're currently getting from our businesses. Al, thank you so much for your update and sharing the information from the Congresswoman and the work that she's doing on childcare. It still continues to be a main topic of discussion. We have a workforce housing consortium in Newburgh that has put together a workforce survey, and we are including childcare as a pretty main theme in that survey for this reason. We also have identified a few childcare partners who are looking to partner directly with businesses to offer on-site childcare, and I just kind of see a potential future trend of that. And I'm just throwing that out there now to say we are having these conversations. We're interested in these conversations, and whatever SEDCOR can do to help to facilitate those conversations and potentially seek funding at a regional level, please let us know. Another topic for regional funding is broadband. So we know that a few of our local service providers have submitted for funds through the state for a broadband expansion project that reaches our rural, unserved, underserved communities and areas. The focus of that is really around telehealth and telelearning. So we are super excited and eager to get feedback on how those grant proposals go. Obviously, this is something that many of you, and I'm seeing kind of heads around the room nodding, are concerned about. Obviously, our educators and our rural community partners and all of our healthcare providers are really concerned about making sure that we're reaching absolutely every single person within our county with at least the ability to access that service. So more to come there, hopefully. All right, that was a mouthful. Thank you.
Thank you, Abisha. And Gioia has a comment or question for you.
I do. Abisha, remind me with that Business Oregon Round 3 funding, that is not actually businesses can apply directly for that funding, correct? They have to go through a CBDI or some other kind of organization like, you know, a public-private relationship.
That's correct, Gioia. So this is funding that individual communities could write for. Of course, it's matching funds for a grant program. So for example, the city of Newburgh could write for this, the city of Carlton. I know the city of McMinnville has been working on a program as well. So individual jurisdictions, economic development districts, for example, SEDCOR could not write for these grants. We're a 501c6 nonprofit organization, which is why we partnered with the Council of Governments and Willamette Workforce Partnership. But yes, you are correct that these are not funds that businesses apply for directly with the state. Organizations such as what I just mentioned, cities and counties would have to apply for those and then turn around and stand up a grant program that those businesses would apply for. Yeah, so again, be looking for that Willamette Workforce Partnership announcement, because in there you will see access to the funds that we have secured through round 1 and round 2 that will be immediately available to businesses. They'll be opening that program at the end of July.
Great, thank you very much, Gioia, for clarifying that, and thank you, Abisha. And I know that actually the 3 commissioners who are on this call, we also talked about the value of expanded access to childcare and how we can help, and also expanding and helping with expansion of quality internet. The nice thing about this is that a lot of the school districts already know where there are gaps. But I, for one at least, and I think that the other commissioners share this, feel like it's pretty important to make sure that they have access. So that's just a straight up statement, is that we need to make sure that our students have access if they're going to be working from home at all. So thank you for that, and we'll work on it, right? Are there any more comments? We're right at 2 o'clock. Congratulations, everybody. Well, I would like to close by just reminding folks out in the community that we are seeing increased case counts. I think everybody here on this call is really committed to keeping us in a state where we're still open. And I know that we can do that, but it's going to really take all of us. It's going to take Commissioner Starrett working with those businesses. It's going to take Commissioner Olson saying, hey, what about this and what about this? It's going to take Wendy helping all of us. But we really need to stay open, I think, personally, in order for our community to have a shot at the future. And so I ask you to join us in that, and we'll work on it. But Commissioner Olson has unmuted himself. So do you get the parting word?
Yeah. One more thing, Casey, I'd like to bring up regarding the broadband is the commission has decided we're going to be scheduling a work session to talk about rural broadband and its effect on telehealth and teleeducation. We're going to be inviting the Oregon Broadband Office, Business Oregon, SEDCOR, and we'll make sure, hopefully, that we can get that out to all of you that would like to view that. Could at least get as a viewer and do that session. So I think that's maybe about 3 weeks from now or a month from now. But we're going to set up that so we can all get on the same line of exactly what the Oregon Broadband Office does, how they work We'll have online Mac, Kathy Tate from Online Mac on it, who's one of our partners, so everybody can get on the same playing field of what the issues with rural broadband are.
That's right. Thank you very much for that reminder, Commissioner. I knew we had something we were talking about. All right. I just want to remind people in the community, we're here with you. Reach out to us. Even this mayor over here who's on his way out, he's still here for you. And he knows so much. So we're committed to helping you, and we'll get through this. All right. Thank you. And we will see you on Friday.